you cannot keep children away from technology, but then we have to identify ways to teach them use it wisely. In 2003, the people who was accessing, specifically the children who were under the age of 15 who were accessing AI or technology, was just very low, that is 10 percentage, has now increased to 100 percentage by 2020, maybe after COVID. So what happens when a child is actually exposed to the technology is that this top down attention that is driven by intention, lessons, and bottom up attention increases. So basically the problem here is not the use of AI, but then the problem is how it is being used. Today, I'll be dealing with how technology influences a child's thinking and focus. So, if you see that 30 years ago, digital connectivity was just limited to few million people worldwide, and now if you see, nearly 5 billion people are connected, despite of the digital divide we have. And digital skills are no longer optional, but it is something that is incorporated along with the life of a child, and it is something that's very significant for playing, learning, future, and careers. So I would like to present this presentation with an idea that you cannot keep children away from technology, but then we have to identify ways to teach them use it wisely. So that is the idea. So now if you see, this is a graph where the digital access has actually increased a lot in the last 10, 12 years. If you see, in 2003, the people who was accessing, specifically the children who were under the age of 15 who were accessing AI or technology, was just very low, that is 10 percentage, has now increased to 100 percentage by 2020, maybe after COVID. Now, some of the biological aspects that needs to be understood when you're talking about child when they are being exposed to technology is that when you talk about children, children's brain is something that is always developing, and it is highly plastic in nature. So basically, they are repeatedly learning, and their attention literally shapes brain structure and function. Now, if you see, digital devices provide a very specific kind of input, that is quick screen changes, bright colors, loud sounds, notifications, autoplay, infinite scroll games, then multitasking demands, switching between apps, messages, videos. So all of these things actually trains the brain in very particular ways. So basically, the brain has two attention modes. That is bottom up attention, that is usually driven by external stimuli. That is, it could be like phone, or it could be video games, loud, bright, and new grabs attention. So it actually takes lots of attention from the children. And there is also something called a top down attention, that is driven by goals and intentions. That is, a child has to intentionally sit for doing a homework despite of the distraction. So what happens when a child is actually exposed to the technology is that this top down attention that is driven by intention, lessons, and bottom up attention increases. So it actually leaves the child to have reactive and shifting attention issues. Now, apart from that, there is prefrontal cortex in the brain that is actually responsible for working memory, planning, organization, inhibiting impulses, cognitive flexibility, etc. So what happens is that rewarding digital activities like game rewards, that is engaging too much in mobile phones or video games, it gives lots of stimulations to the brain, and it acts as a reward system. And frequent multitasking and switching between the apps can actually make it harder to concentrate. So too many screen use actually affect the attention, working memory, self control, decision making, and mostly they end up becoming more distracted easily, act impulsively, and they also lose focus, and they cannot engage in activities that are less stimulating. They always want bright and stimulating activities. Apart from that, structural changes like gray matter or white matters, we call it as. So in gray matters, aspects like language, education, planning, and decision making, emotional control, all changes. So white matter is something that actually helps the brain communicate with each other. However, exposure to the screen can actually be associated with differences in pathways that is related to language and reading, attention, cognitive control. Now, when you talk about child developmental needs, that is, every children go through different stages of development. So, and at, like at every stage, there are certain milestones that needs to be met. Now, for example, infant, who is actually between the age group of 0 to 12. Now, they directly don't use digital devices. However, there are adults like their parents that is around them who uses devices. So basically this is a place where children are developing certain secure attachment bonds with the primary caregivers like mother and father. Now when the mother or father is completely engaged in using phones or other technological devices, it can actually impact in creating secure bonds with the child. And similarly, toddlers, when they are into 1 to 3, it's very common that small children highly nowadays use mobile phones, better than adults. They are good at navigating, touch screens and applications. They know how to navigate YouTube, take, content out of it. But then the problem is that this is the age of development. So it is a time where they develop cognitively. So there is a higher chance that there could be lots of sleep pattern issues, and also it can what impact the rapid brain development and also hinder language acquisition. If you see the preschoolers who's ranging from 3 to 5, there are a lot of educational content who is within the YouTubes or within the technological context. However, even though it could be something, initially it could be rewarding in nature, but later on they will find it difficult to concentrate. They may find it difficulty with attention span, or self regulation, or ability to control their behavior by engaging in uh, activities in technological aspects. Now when you talk about older children, they also use sophisticated digital tools for educational purposes. But then when they are becoming big, there is a more focus on social media, due to which they have this feelings of comparing with others, feelings of inadequacy and low self-esteem. Now, when you talk about digital technology, we also have to understand there are benefits and challenges. When there are certain benefits, and it comes under certain challenges as well. Now, for example, educational apps, tablets, and mobile phones are basically installed in the most of the apps that actually facilitate learning. But at the same time, there is a potential risk of overuse that is linked to possibilities of ADHD symptoms if it is unregulated. Similarly, video games can actually provide a spatial space for problem solving and exploration of new games. But at the same time, it is something that is replaced by physical activity. So transform then again, virtual reality is something that would help in experiencing new lived experience. But then, high equipment or cost is something that creates inequality where everybody may not be able to access it. Then again, online connections actually create laudable collaborations and communication, but at the same time, it can impair development, face-to-face conversational, nuances. So this is actually a case where a class 9 student who got stuck in physics problems. So she had no idea how to solve it, but then instantly she used the help of AI to solve it. So basically, the problem here is not the use of AI. but then the problem is how it is being used. So basically children nowadays, they have the tendency to summarize the content with the AI, but when they get a different question in the answer sheets, they may not be able to comprehend the content because they have learned a comprehensive or summarized version. So now there are certain mediating factors also. That is, you have to consider the protective effect as well as the risk factor when you talk about technology and its influence on the teenage or the children. So basically, it is important. Like if you focus more on the protective factors, maybe AI or technology could be a positive indicator for children. But then like for example, the content type, if it is interactive educational apps with clear learning goals, it could be beneficial.